Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Once Fantasy MLR champions, now outside looking in on the playoffs, which means some new faces are competing for their very first Fantasy MLR championship. We help you get there. We break down all the matches coming up here in week 9, the fantasy performers that you need to look out for, plus some waiver wire options to be possible league winners. The Fantasy Ruckers Show starts right now.
Where rugby and the world of fantasy sports collide. Welcome to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, talking all things rugby from the MLR to leagues around the world. We're on top of it. Headphones on, pads off. This is the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, and Devin Vanderpool.
What's up, everybody? This is episode 193 of the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Thank you so much to our Fantasy Ruckers League members, our community members, and everyone else tagging along on this journey of making fantasy rugby a reality in MLR. It is our Rucking Rundown episode of the week, so that means Matt Yee is here with me on this episode to look ahead to an exciting week 9 to come. A lot shook out in the aftermath of week 8. The standings looking a whole lot different than last week as we headed into the weekend, and we are going to break that all down this episode. Maddie, how are you doing?
Good, man. I mean, not great that I'm not going to be in the in the playoffs for the listener league, but hey, it is what it is. Kudos to the people that made it to their respective playoffs. Godspeed.
Well, that is why I have so kindly titled this episode, Maddie, The Mighty Have Fallen, because you, I guess, are racking up your fantasy MLR cleats for the rest of the season.
Well, I got the toilet bowl final.
You got the toilet bowl final, but in addition to, Maddie, you just falling short in the listener league by, I think it was like literally by 20 points or something, right? Like you were dang close into making it. The TFR boys got taken down by the one and only James Dealey of MLR Stats and NA Rugby DB to snatch the playoff spot from our grasp. So the defending champions, the defending 2025 OG League champions don't even have a shot at defending our title. Obviously, talked with James about that and our disappointment, and obviously his excitement to make playoffs once again in his return to Fantasy MLR. Last episode in our quick tap recap earlier this week on episode 192. And Maddie, I told James and I said, awesome to have you as part of the TFR family, of course. But he was so humble. He was so humble in his winning of beating us into the final. And I told him, I don't know if it's worse and makes me even angrier that such a nice guy took us down and has us outside looking in.
Yeah, it's never fun when the nice guys do it because it's just so hard to hate them. So kudos to James. Yeah, kudos to everybody who made it again. Not a year for the boys, but that's all right.
Yeah. Either way, I will mention that it is your Supreme Commissioner Yee who is undefeated in the listener league, looking to see if I can snatch the title away from Devin Vanderpool, who did manage to get into the playoffs. Now, speaking of Devin Vanderpool, usually we have him later on in the show to join us for his Fantasy MLR tip of the week and the TFR betting challenge, but it seems like we have lost Vandy during his long weekend travels. I hear a trip up to Tobermory was in his family schedule over the Victoria Day long weekend, and seems like he got a little bit lost on his way back and will not be making it to this episode this week. Either way, I'm sure we'll be seeing Vandy soon. But in lieu of him and in his replacement, we will do our best to try to give you all the advice that you will need heading into playoffs, along with the waiver wire breakdown this episode and a look ahead to the entire slate of week 9 matches. That, of course, is going to have big implication, and not only how the standings are going to continue to shake out in MLR 2026 in the league itself, but also what fantasy managers will be looking for to best position themselves in a way that is going to get them a win in this semifinal week of Fantasy MLR playoffs and in to a championship matchup next week. So a jam-packed episode, lot to get to. If you didn't already, check out episode 192 for the quick tap recap with North American Rugby Database's James
That's
Dealey,
cool.
who again is part of now the TFR family. It's been fun in now 2 episodes of co-hosting with him in our recap episode, and of course in our later episode in this one, our preview episode, as we continue with our newly formatted programming here on the Fantasy Ruckers Show. With that being said, if you aren't already, follow us at the Fantasy Ruckers handles on the YouTube video down below in the description. If you're listening on the pod, join the Discord community. Link to do that is down below, and check out the official platform for Fantasy MLR here on the Fantasy Ruckers Show on thefantasyruckers.com. All right, Maddie, let's get into the news.
News dump.
All right, time for this episode 193 news dump. And I feel like the timing is perfect, Maddie, because now that we have pushed our preview episode to now releasing on Thursdays, it allows us to give a nice little gander into the weekly player availability report that's so luckily released every single Wednesday for us to dig deep into the guys that we may be looking for on players that will be available for our semi-final matchups here in the Fantasy MLR playoffs. So let's get right into it. A handful of did not practices. I will say that New England Free Jacks had no DNPs, including Jamison Fa'anana Schultz. So there is a possibility that we do see our first Jama appearance. It'd be interesting to see the cojones that league managers have to maybe slotting him in the lineup if he does appear in that starting 15, maybe even starting at 23. But nonetheless, obviously coming off of that championship win with Racing Narbonne overseas, now quickly takes that overseas flight back to New England to make it just in time for the tail end of the season. However, guys that did not practices on Anthem Rugby Carolina squad, James Scott and Ramiro Gurovich are out for Anthem Rugby Carolina. We did see a Seth Smith sighting for the first time this year coming off of the bench. It was Campbell Robb who started at the hooker position, but either way may give you a little bit more assurance to league managers that you can lean on Campbell Robb there now that with Gurovich is out. And it'd be interesting to see whether or not Seth Smith may get his crack soon.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. I think, it was good to see him on the bench. It'll be really interesting to kind of break this down at the end of the season of what the heck happened to Seth Smith. But yeah, not too many other ones. I know Owaru, like you said, Ryan, or like Jam Delay said, was on that list as well for the second week in a row and do not practice. So, we'll definitely skew some of our waiver decisions.
Rumble also adding to that Chicago Hounds did not practice list with the hit to the head that he had. Obviously not a good sign. So managers who have been going with Lucas Rumble, or I guess to your point, Maddie, picked up a Waru over the waiver wire and have been relying on him, will need to look elsewhere here on the waiver wire moving forward. And there might be an open spot there for a Hounds team that had a slew of back row player options there, now has dwindled down to not so many. So we'll look to see how we can take advantage of that. Lastly is Ryan James, still did not practice for the California Legion, left the match with HIA and did not return. Obviously not a good sign. May give you a little bit more confidence for players like Corbin Smith that we will obviously talk about in the waiver wire. But again, very, very nice to dive into this player availability report to give you at least some inkling on how to approach the waiver wire, which we'll talk about in just a sec. Now, also to talk about here is guys that have made a name for themselves in the league and have either moved elsewhere or have called it a career. And a guy that, Maddie, you're very familiar with, maybe due to a platform falling down in the Dallas Jackals days. Former first-round overall pick Eric Naposki has retired officially. He's a guy that played in the MLR between 2022 and 2024. 6 tries in 24 games, 18 starts between Dallas and Miami, racking up over 1,000 meters, according to, of course, our very own North American Rugby Database's James Dealey announces a retirement. Congratulations to Eric Naposki.
Yeah, congrats. I mean, the guy's always had great feet when he was on Dallas, was fantasy relevant for sure when he was playing. Good luck on retirement, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Either way, always love to see kind of players making that next step or going post rugby career wise. Going to be interesting to see where we find maybe Naposki in the future. Nonetheless, yeah, always love to support the players and the decisions they make. All right, Maddie, let's get right into the waiver wire breakdown, which we have been alluding to, which will use some of that
Hmm.
player availability report information to make some big calls here in the Fantasy MLR playoffs.
Waiver wire breakdown.
All right, waiver wire breakdown, a big one. I know we've said it in the past, by Mageddon was a big waiver wire. Heading into another handful of injuries and things like that. Obviously, been relying on the waiver wire, but I feel like heading into this week with Fantasy MLR playoffs kicking off. This is also another big one. And of course, with the injuries that we just talked about in the player availability report, where there are going to be guys that are going to be looking for options on the waiver wire and maybe some clarification or some confirmation on guys that maybe we can lean more on and spend a little bit more fab because we're confident in them coming through. The tip here is there is no tomorrow. You lose this week, you are out. So if you find a
Hmm.
guy that you think that you is going to benefit you and get that W this week, got to do it. Lay the money down. The extra fab is not going to help you in the future. There's obviously that game if you're really confident that you're going to make that championship, that you obviously leave a little bit for you to spend next week, but add that extra dollar. If you're hesitant, it never hurts, especially if it means that it'll make the difference between getting a W versus not getting a W, especially if it is a position or player of need. So with that being said, Maddie, let's get right into the options that we have. From the front row position, we begin. Not that many options, to be honest.
Hmm.
There are guys that obviously have been coming through speculation that maybe you can turn to go through that. Obviously, a lot of people dropped a whole lot of money on Andrew Quattrin when he came in. He is still 88% owned and has not appeared in a match yet. It has been Sion Tupuo who has been playing, or as of late, has started at the hooker position for the last 4 weeks in a row. So when are we going to see that transition? It'll be interesting either way. None of those guys available for you guys on the waiver wire. So we go deep in the list. And for me to do that, I end up going to the guy that I guess people don't listen to me on the waiver wire when I mention, or they just have better options. But I'm going with the same guy that I mentioned last week. He still remains at 38% owned, Payton Talea Alalio, because he, again, gives you a very modest and adequate performance over the week. In round eight, gives you 5.1 fantasy point performance in the 63 minutes played, 30 meters gained, 7 tackles from a front row player. I'll take that every single day. He has now gone 4 straight matches that he's appeared in above 4 fantasy points, and I will take that from the front row position. So, again, this is, as needed. I will say Campbell Robb is also only
Yep.
50% owned. So that's the other one there. I would prefer Campbell Robb over Payton Talea Alalio, but with Campbell Robb being more owned in this circumstance, that would be my second pivot option. So look for Campbell Robb, especially with Ramiro Gurovic out on the did not practice list. I imagine he will be there. My deep play, I guess, would be maybe Seth Smith to see maybe if we can sneak in a start here if he does
Eh,
appear. But again, not counting on it. So ordering those in the 3 order there: Campbell Robb, Payton Talea, Alalio, and then Seth Smith.
yeah, I like Campbell Robb here. I think the fact that he's able to score over 5 points off the bench and has scored over 5 points every time he's played except once. Yeah, I think you can take that pretty well. So, yeah, I like Campbell Robb here at 50% owned.
Campbell Robb off the bench or Seth Smith starting?
Campbell Robb.
Really? Really, really, really? Wow, that's
What has
impressive.
Seth Smith done for me?
That's true. But we've seen what he's done in the past. And I guess there is a decision that why he hasn't been in the lineup. Does him liking all of our Instagram posts change anything for you?
It should, but man, I would have loved to see him play more.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. That'll definitely throw a wrench and a stir into things if that's the lineup that Anthem Rugby Carolina do come out. But again, the backup option there, Payton Talea Alalio. But yeah, look for Campbell Robb first. 50% owned. He's half out there, but again, trying to give you guys options that are below that 50% mark. All right, second row positions. This one is a fun one. And this one, I know everyone has available on their waiver wire, and I would 100% be running to the waiver wire and spending the fab on there. Matt, you give me a funny look. Can you guess the guy that I'm thinking of right now?
I know who you're thinking of.
You don't think it. Even friend of the show. You're not
Yeah, I
giving
love
back.
the guy.
You
I mean, yeah, he's the best guy there. That's for sure.
All right. Well, Callum Botcher is the name. 0% owned. If you're in need of a second row guy, this is a guy that has played 80 minutes in the last three matches during the stretch in which the Seattle Seawolves have been absolutely tearing it up. I imagine he is going to be part of that starting 15 moving forward. He scores his first try of the season in week 8. His season high 11.4 fantasy points. Has gone 3 straight games with double-digit tackles. The floor is there. The ceiling is there. He plays the full 80 minutes. That's exactly what I want from a second row player. I'm not expecting anything massive, but the potential for him to be a matchup winner is there, and I'm going to side with that every single time. I go for ceiling when it comes to playoffs. Callum Botcher fits that mold.
Yeah, and hey, friend of the show, love to support the boys. So yeah, definitely go and pick them up.
Callum Botcher
Callum Botcher.
or Rhino Herbst.
Callum Botcher.
Okay. All right. All right. Just got to ask the question. All right, let's move to the back row position, Maddie. This one is interesting. Felt like there was more options before, not as many options now. You go through the list and you're thinking, what can we do here? What can we do here? The deep play with both Lucas Rumble being out, Matawaru being out, you can look at possibly an Emmanuel Albert spot start there. Maybe a Jake, I don't even know how to pronounce this guy's last name. Kineviok? Maybe Jake Kineviok.
No clue.
Those would be the two that you may want to keep an eye on because I feel like a spot start is incoming here for one of those two players. Now, you lean now to guys that you may feel a little bit more comfortable with. Maybe Marno Redalingus would be the option for me. Seattle Seawolves player has started basically every single game for the Seawolves this season. Scores his high 10.2 fantasy points in round 8. Adds a try on that as well. Again, these round 8 numbers for the Seawolves are going to be inflated. It feels like everyone was scoring for the Seawolves this past weekend against Anthem Rugby Carolina, which of course we broke down in episode 192 earlier this week. But nonetheless, Seattle is obviously tearing it up, and Marno Redalingus is a guy that is starting, playing full 80, has the potential to score. Not a pretty play. Maddie, I'll ask you this. Would you want Marno Redalingus to start here in your back flex or forward flex position, or the guy that is going to slot in at that third Chicago Hounds back row position?
Probably Chicago Hounds, just for the fact of the possibility. But, if you're looking for a floor, I think Marno Redalingus gives you that little bit of consistency, I guess, or a sure thing that you're going to get a couple points at least.
Yeah. I agree. All right, let's move on to the halfback position. The same story all season long. You didn't have one of these guys to start the season. You probably don't have one of these guys now. But either way,
nope.
There are maybe some sneaky plays that you could possibly go in. Keep an eye on the California Legion lineup. The interesting play this past weekend was Stephen Crimp because he started at the back 3 position at the fullback. It's his second time starting this year. Both of them at the fullback's position. He still maintains his fly half eligibility, and this will be the last week he's able to do that if he does start in the back 3. So if that is the case, I'm keeping a close eye on that. I may just drop a little bit of fab there to try to pick him up and see if the lineup comes out and he is starting. As soon as I see that lineup and Crimp isn't in the lineup, let's say it's Rory Van Voot that's in there, then I find an alternative and drop Crimp and go the other way. But the idea that I can have possible fullback production at the halfback position is a spicy one. And managers that did capitalize that on last week, it did pay off because he had 12.7 fantasy points with 112 meters gained and a try assist, and obviously had the luxury of you slotting him in at that halfback position.
Yeah, I mean, we always, me, I love to see a halfback playing back 3. That's for sure. We saw that for a little bit with JP Smith. Haven't seen him back at 9. So that's the downside. But yeah, love to see that. That's definitely huge upside, especially for when playoffs come around.
If that's not the case and Crimp is not in the lineup, then I guess you're going to be picking up Zion Going because Zion Going starts for you, hasn't scored higher than 2 fantasy points in the past 2 weeks, albeit one of them being off the bench. He did score an 11.2 burner in the week before, with his only try of the year. However, 2.7 in round 8, obviously in a tough matchup against the Seattle Seawolves. All right, on to the center position. This one, again, I think this could be another matchup winner. This is not something often that we have in the waiver wire breakdown. People scrambled away from him. He was our waiver wire pickup of the week earlier in the season, then got that red card in round 4, and we have not seen him since. But in his first return back, we see him in round 8, starts at the 13th position. 14.8 fantasy points for Ben Lesage. 80 minutes played, 76 meters gained, and a beautiful try at that. He adds 4 tackles on top of that. If you're in need of a center, and I know a lot of you are in need of a center, Ben Lesage is my guy that is an adequate, more than adequate starter here to plop right into your lineup and expect that you're going to get some production in return. We're going to get into the match against Anthem Rugby Carolina that they do have coming up. It is a must win for New England, and Ben Lesage is going to be a big part of that. So I think out of all the players that I've listed down on this waiver wire breakdown, I think Ben Lesage is the biggest one that fantasy managers, if you just need someone to play at a flex position and not even just a center, I think he is a very, very good play this week.
Yeah, I think it's a rare occasion, like you said, Rye, that a starting caliber guy that usually is held in rosters all year long is available in the waiver wire, especially this late in the season or this early in the postseason, I guess. Yeah, you love to see it. You got to take a chance of that opportunity every chance you get.
Absolutely. All right, back 3 position, Maddie, to round things out. This one's interesting. The Ryan James report that we talked about earlier on the did not practice list kind of funnels into this. Corbin Smith, I think, is a fantastic play. He has started at the 14 for 2 straight weeks now. Now you add the Ryan James injury to that mix, I feel even more confident that we are going to see Corbin Smith here in this California Legion lineup coming up in week 9. Now, not necessarily that impressive in terms of the last week that he played. 5.5 fantasy points in the 26 meters gained and 8 tackles that he racked up there in the past weekend. However, we know this is with the back 3 position. It is a high-low game. You're looking for that ceiling. You're risking it for the biscuit, and we've seen Corbin Smith do it before. 15 in the 15 spot in round 4, scored 17.7 fantasy points. In round 7, the week before this past weekend, scored 13.6. Of course, both of those needed tries. However, that's exactly what you're looking for in the back 3 play. So Corbin Smith is my pickup of the week. I know that in terms of the back 3 position, I know that he's available in most leagues. A quarter or 3/4 of leagues out there have him. 25% owned only. And this is a guy that does have a pretty high ceiling and a decent floor, I would say, compared to other back 3 players.
Yeah, I like it. I like the play. I think it's opportunistic. So that's what you have to be in the waiver wire, especially when playoffs come around.
I will say, just to give you guys another option, the other one I was going to lay down is a guy that had looked his best all season long, is on a team that is on the rise, Nolan Tuamoehialoa. He's the guy that I want to maybe pivot to if I'm not able to get Corbin Smith. He's looked great, at least in this past match. I get it. It was against Anthem where it was a barn burner, but there could be a possibility we get another Nolan Tuamoehialoa start, and we pop him in the lineup as well. Obviously, a tough matchup against Chicago, but I'm going to side with the hot hand here. But Corbin Smith, my preferred option between the 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Corbin Smith too. I just think the opportunities there. We've seen Nolan in and out of the lineup. I feel much more confident with Corbin Smith seeing it last week and seeing it another week again.
All right. Well, surprisingly, Maddie, a handful of good options here on the waiver wire to help fantasy managers here in the first round of playoffs. Semifinal matchups upcoming here for our fantasy managers. Hey, and maybe some of these guys will be winning some people a chance at taking a shot at a championship. All right, let's talk about the matches, though, that are going to be playing a big role in deciding who will be playing in those championship matchups.
Rucking Rundown.
All right, time for our week 9 Rucking Rundown. Maddie, you are starting to run away with things.
At
15
least I'm
and
doing it
6
somewhere.
on the season. The fact that's actually like you got to be pretty high in the Jacks Rangers picks, huh? Like that is pretty dang good, Maddie. 15 and 6? That's
Don't know
solid.
what to tell you, man.
That
I'm just seeing the field right now. I'm seeing the field.
Vandy 13 and 8. I have fallen to 12 and 9. You can tell me, I will tell you right now, I will no longer be relying on this Anthem Rugby Carolina team that I think
Mm.
has solely put me at the bottom of this list. Can you tell I'm salty? Yes, I am. So we are going to maybe that previews a little bit what I'm going to be picking here in this first match that we're breaking down. But again, a fun week that we have ahead of us. I think one of the most meaningful weeks as the standings are continuing to be tight. You look at outside of the Chicago Hounds, where everyone stands. Again, we kind of broke this down into depth on the earlier episode with James earlier this week about what this means. Again, 4 and 3 is the Seattle Seawolves that lead the pack at the second spot behind the obviously undefeated Chicago Hounds. Anthem at the bottom at 2 and 5. So again, the separation is not that big between the 5 teams that are vying for those final 3 playoff spots. Obviously, with Chicago already locking up that playoff spot and not being able to finish any lower than
Oh,
third.
this weekend is 1-2 versus 3-4 versus 5-6.
So let's get into that 5-6 matchup, Maddie. Anthem Rugby Carolina versus the New England Free Jacks, 7 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. This is a must win for both these teams. Anthem, out of the bunch, actually has, when James and I broke it down, I think, in my opinion, the easiest schedule on the way out, in part due to them being the only team that does not need to face Chicago here to finish up the rest of the season, I believe, or at least, yeah. Yeah, they are the only team that does not need to face Chicago for the rest of the season. So that in itself makes it the earlier season. New England still having to do that. So you may argue that the bigger must win is here for New England. But again, both these teams are outside looking in right now at the playoff spot in the 5 and 6 spots. And a heartbreaking loss. I don't know what it is about Old Glory DC and New England that they always seem to have a trouble then. Jason Robertson is in their nightmares every single time. They have now gone 2 straight years where they have been swept by that DC side, have not won and at home, away, none of that. Doesn't matter. They are getting beat on that, and that happened last week, what has put them in this position. So now they got to take it to Anthem Rugby Carolina away from home.
All right, Ryan, who you got? I didn't hear a pick.
I'm going New England. I alluded to it. I'm not doing this anymore. I am not choosing Anthem Rugby Carolina anymore.
All right, I'll go Anthem Rugby Carolina just
swear to
because the
God.
fact that
You know what this is
I think Anthem Rugby Carolina can actually pull out a win. I mean, they have more points for, they have more points against, but New England struggles scoring points. So, yeah, let's see New England end up last place.
Is there anyone that you're scared of in this matchup? So let's say you pick up, like, who would you rather have? You're picking Ben Lesage off the waiver wire or one of the Anthem Rugby Carolina centers?
I mean, probably Ben Lesage, but like
over Tom Pittman, over
yeah,
who else has been starting at Dom McKenna or Ben Lesage?
yeah, probably Ben Lesage.
Okay.
Well, actually, probably Domikina, actually, if he's starting.
Okay.
But
Anthem Rugby
Yeah.
Carolina back 3 or New England back 3?
I mean, you just look at the back 3 for Anthem Rugby Carolina. They're in like the top. I mean, Julian Roberts, honestly, alone kind of beats the entire New England Free
Julian
Jacks back.
Roberts, obviously, I think is ahead of the rest. If Jordan Trainer's starting, I'm obviously starting him.
Yep.
Connor Mooneyham or Nathan Salmon if Mooneyham starts?
Salmon.
Salmon, okay. Corbin Smith, because he was our waiver wire pickup, above all the New England Free Jacks back 3 players?
No. I'd do both Nathan Salmon and Mitch Wilson over Corbin Smith.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. All right, so I go New England. Maddie goes Anthem Rugby Carolina here. No one really that is flashing out in the pan for me in terms of must starts on both sides, huh? Like, obviously you have your key guys, but like I'm not excited necessarily about any of the guys on these rosters.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's nothing. There's no crazy opportunity here, fantasy.
All right, let's move on to now the 4 p.m. Eastern time Sunday matchup. This I think, is the matchup of the week. 1 versus 2. Chicago at
Wow,
home.
it's like
The
1 versus 4, really.
the undefeated team going against what many consider the second
All
hottest team in
right,
the league, I guess.
Chicago. Let's move on.
Are you going? We're
This
both
is
gonna go.
kind of silly.
Come
I
on. I
mean,
thought you were gonna. Oh, come on.
no,
Let's make it
there's just
spicy.
too much of
Let's
a gap.
let's
There's
make
too
it
much. There's
spicy.
too.
I said
Sure, go
Chicago.
Seattle, but it
No,
doesn't matter
no, you go
because
Seattle. I want to go Chicago.
okay, I'll go Seattle, but I'm saying Chicago's gonna win. They're
No,
just
okay, no,
above the
I can't
rest.
do that. I can't do that. You pick Chicago. It's okay. This
They
is
have
there
a
any world?
152 point
I
differential. I
know.
don't understand. Yeah, okay. Yes, there's of course a world. We know this league is win on any given Sunday, but unfortunately this year it's win on any given Saturday or Sunday except against Chicago. So like, yeah. I hate to break to Seattle, but yeah, I just don't see it. I mean, even with Devon Rousseau, even with Patty Ryan, even with Duncan Matthews playing at their best, I think Chicago's just too good. You look at Brock Webster, you look at guys like Mark O'Keefe, Theo Fourie, their back row is just absolutely putting in numbers. So you like to see that. Yeah, I don't. I think it'll be a good game. I just think Chicago's going to win.
Okay. Both go Chicago in this one. Devon Rousseau or
Yes.
no, I did.
What
Obviously,
do you mean?
yes. Devon Rousseau over
Yes,
both of the Chicago centers.
dude. Yeah,
Okay.
I already said yes.
Devon Rousseau or Brock Webster has a higher point total this week.
I think Devon Rousseau has a higher point total.
Okay. Did you see the post that we released out there? Is this the first year that the
Mhm.
TRFR curse is going to be broken?
We'll find out. Don't jinx it.
We'll find out. All right. Let's get into California versus Old Glory DC is the Sunday night rugby matchup, 8 p.m. Eastern time. This one, I got to
Who
admit,
cares?
huh?
Who cares?
What do you mean you care?
Who cares?
Why? Okay, explain. Explain.
They're the middle childs.
Yes,
There's
but
less riding on this. Actually, honestly, the first 1-2 game kind of really doesn't matter.
the first one, two, oh, you mean the Seattle
The
Chicago
1-2
game?
game, the Chicago Seattle
Well,
game,
yes,
literally
but
does not
the
matter.
enticement
The
of
only games that matter is actually this one and the other one.
well, the enticement though of Chicago, I think this is the best chance that Chicago or that there's any team to beat Chicago for them to not have an undefeated season.
All right. Yeah. Great.
Okay, so that
The
being
best chance is like 1 in 10 odds. Yeah, I mean, this one's a good game. I like this game.
it's dynamic because it's interesting because you got a team like California Legion that is obviously can be very, very explosive, right? But then you got an Old Glory DC side that tends to be very stingy. It's exactly what they showed
know
against
what?
the New England Free Jacks.
I'm going California Legion.
That's what I was gonna go.
Well,
All right.
sucks to suck, but
All
I'm
right.
going California Legion. Yeah, I just think that offensively they can really take it to Old Glory DC. I know Old Glory DC is coming hot off a great game against New England, but that's New England. This is a team that can actually score points. And yeah, I just don't see them. I think Ben Houston, Ed Timpson are going to be huge in this one. I think in the back three, Mono and obviously Betrano is going to be leading the ship. So yeah, I like Cal Legion.
On the DC side, the centers have been just abysmal. I know your boy Jordan Jackson Hope, you're very high on him. Ross Depperschmidt has not been cutting it. Ben Lesage or Jordan Jackson Hope?
Jordan Jackson.
Really?
Dude, I don't know what you mean by like, yeah, Ben Lesage has played 3 weeks, but also Jordan Jackson Hope has been putting up 5 points every week for the last 4 weeks.
Yes, but like, I mean, are you really liking 5 points every week from the center
No, but look
position?
at Ben Lesage. He's only
Well,
gone
yes, but in the games that he has played, he's put up double digits.
in every one.
Well,
Wow.
the ceiling is there. That's what I'm saying. And I
Are you
said
telling
that.
me the ceiling is not there for Jordan Jackson Hope?
No, we haven't seen it all year long. They can't score.
Anyways, Cal Legion wins.
All right.
Cal Legion ends up third.
Billy Meeks or Ben Lesage?
Probably Meeks. Yeah, Meeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just gotta do a check. Just gotta do a check there. Either way, all right. We're both going California in this one. I mean, I always love my California Legion assets here because I know that points are going to be coming up. But again, just be wary because DC does have a very stingy defense. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is a lower scoring affair than what you may expect usually from the California Legion, which then again often bodes not so well for fantasy purposes. All right, Maddie, let's get into here as a wrap up here in our TFR betting challenge.
TFR betting challenge.
All right, TFR betting challenge. I'm very happy Vandy's not here because he is kicking my butt in this challenge, and it continues this week because I thought that the money line of New England being the underdog was a slam dunk pick. It looked good up until 20 minutes left in the match, and then Jason Robertson came through. So if there's any silver lining or any solace, New England, I'm right there with you. Jordan Jackson Hope is in my nightmares as well in bad beats. So that just goes to show you, hey, this league is crazy. You think you know what you're doing, and then you don't know. Vandy's overs have been working a lot, and I think, honestly, that's probably the pick that I would go here is that Anthem Rugby Carolina New England over because Anthem Rugby Carolina's defense has been crazy. I will say Chicago Seattle's interesting too with an over there because Chicago has allowed a decent amount of points. They did it most recently against the Anthem, but that one should be a spicy one. Either way, yeah, I guess this is a long story short to say that this year, for me, at least from the betting challenge side of things, has not been fun. I don't like it. And if you listen to Vandy with his point totals, it's been a much more fun ride than me trying to go for those underdog sneaky underlines because clearly Vegas knows something and I do not.
This is why it pays off to be a degenerate.
Yeah, it does indeed. It does indeed. All right, Maddie. Well, hey, outside looking in for you for the Fantasy MLR playoffs. So I leave you with this question. Listener League, Vandy and I, opposite sides of the bracket. I could see him in the final. Who would you rather win the Listener League here moving forward? Or you're going to pick one of our listeners?
Nah, I'll root for Vandy. I'm on Vandy's side. You don't need a win.
You want back-to-back dubs.
The Supreme Commissioner don't need a win.
I'm going to pretend like I didn't hear that. All right. Well, hey, everyone enjoy the first round of the Fantasy MLR playoffs amid an exciting slate of matches here coming up in week 9. Remember, for those of you who are outside looking in for those playoffs, like Maddie, hey, you still got something to play for. The highly coveted Toilet Bowl Championship. So the fun doesn't end just yet. All right, for Matt Yee, for Devin Vandy Vanderpool, I am Ryan Yee. Enjoy the weekend of matches. For all of our American listeners and viewers, have a great long holiday weekend, and we'll see you next week on another episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
Find you, Vandy.
You've been listening to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, covering everything rugby from the MLR and beyond. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and be sure to tell all your friends. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, connect with us on social media at the Fantasy Ruckers. Till next time, this is the Fantasy Ruckers Show, signing off.